any way you want, because E hat here is going to be your tool to figure out what you want to know. So, in this case, if you want to figure out how many, let's say, zerglings zealots can kill, we'll have, let's say, E sub 1, 1. Sorry, that's probes on drones. E sub 2, 2 would equal, let's say, 3. Because one zealot can kill 3 zerglings. That's a reasonable way of describing these numbers. Or we can say that E sub 2, 2 could equal 0.75. Because 100 minerals worth of zealots can only kill 75 minerals worth of zerglings. What if this is really early in the game and gas is really, really important? Well, we can have, let's say, the effectiveness of the argon on mutalisks. And then we'll know that, let's say, 300 minerals, 300 gas of archons can kill 600 gas worth of mutalisks. And that would be an efficiency about 2. Of course, these numbers I'm pulling out of my head right now are experimental results. We've found this through experiment over and over again. But the point is, these numbers exist, and they can be found through experimentation, and that's the important thing for all future calculations. Let's suppose it's really, really late game, and you have like 6,000 gas, but you're limited to your last like 700 minerals. Well, the mineral efficiency of an archon, let's say, on zerglings, is going to be something like 6 to 8 or so. So, using these efficiencies, using this efficiency matrix, we can sort of choose, we can decide what units to make, what units to build. So still, all we have here, what's on the background? Is this something we need? Yes! Thank you. This is awesome. That means we get to do fun things today, as opposed to just math. That's fun.
Let's go to...
Okay.
Projector black, okay? So you can go back to 2 when we need this. Okay.
Thank you, Molfra.
I just restarted it.
That's all it takes. Alright, so we have a way of defining how these things work. So, how do we do something with it? Well, that's when your linear algebra comes in. Remember at the beginning of class when I said you should have a really good background in math? This is what I mean, okay? So if you don't know what vectors and matrices are, I suggest you go find someone who does, or get a book or something. But we're going to do something with this. Now remember that E sub I j is the effectiveness of P sub I on Z sub j. Of course, you can replace P with Z or T or Z, whatever, you erase. So what we'll end up with is, if we take the transpose of P and multiply by the efficiency, by the whole matrix, we'll end up with a 1 by m vector. We'll end up with a 1 by m vector. What are the elements of this vector? The elements of this vector would be the sum of I to n of P sub I E sub 1 I. Now, what do you think this means? Well, think about it. P sub I, and you're summing from 1 to n. So you're basically going through each unit. You're going through your dragoon, your probe, zealot, dragoon. You're going down through each unit, multiplying it by its relative efficiency against each Zerg unit. In this case, Zerg number 1. And, I defined it earlier as the drone, but you can define it as anything you want. The second term, then, would be the sum of I to n, P sub I again, of E sub 2 I. So in this case, this is the sum of all your units again, with the efficiencies against the second unit. And you go on and so on and so forth, until you have your the sum of I to n of P sub I E sub N. Sorry, M, because that's the number of units Zerg has. Mi. So this will then be the relative efficiencies of your entire army against each single group of units that the opponent has. Yes?
So is that telling us what Zerg units are just bad against Protoss?
Exactly. Or which Protoss units are good against Zerg. For instance, if you are trying to calculate how efficient mineral-wise Archons are against Zerglings, then you'll end up with some term over here. So if your Archon term is like 7 and your efficiency is 6, you'll end up with a calculation that you can defeat something like 42 Zerglings with using your Archons alone. So that's exactly right. It's saying which units that you have, or which units that the Zerg has that you are best against. Now this is still this is kind of crude because this is only the efficiency of your whole army against one type of unit. So then we multiply it over by what I call the appropriation vector. This multiplication is kind of bad because I'm gonna write it as a dot product, but it's actually not a dot product. It's a component-wise multiplication. Suppose you can send 30% of all your units against, let's say, the Zerglings, for instance. So you have 0.3 times whatever's over there. So, and then let's say 70% of your army against the Mutalisks. So you have 0.7 down here, and zeros everywhere else if they have nothing else to fight. So what you'll end up with is your units. So this is your effectiveness against drones, multiply the number of drones you're fighting, or the percent of drones you're fighting. This is your effectiveness against Zerglings. This is the percent of your army you're sending against Zerglings, and so on and so forth. So basically, what this put together gives you is P transpose times E, component-wise multiplication with your appropriation vector. This will give you how many of each unit you can expect to kill. Okay? So, using this formula, you'll have a rough idea of what your upcoming army, your upcoming battle is going to be like. Yes?
Doesn't it also depend on how many units? Like, you can't expect to kill like as many Mutalisks if there's like, say, like twice as many as you expect.
Exactly. You have to. We'll get to that later. Good thinking. We'll get to that in just a moment. Okay. So of course, this is what you expect to kill, and then if you subtract by the actual z vector, then we'll have what the result of your next battle will come out to be. So the vector, let's say result, the resultant vector after this whole multiplication, sum, subtraction, whatever, is what you expect after battle. Yes.
Why is P multiplied by E? Like, shouldn't P and E be some other function? Like, if you have like one Zergling, it'd be like way different than having like 20.
Yes, that's true.
Different effectivenesses, so it should be like a dot product or another function.
Technically, it will be a tensor if you want to calculate that precisely, but we'll get to slight perturbations in this E that will be able to help us solve it. Because if we try to solve it with tensors, that is beyond the math of undergraduates, okay? So, and frankly, I don't really know how, but we can come up with a way that can model how it works pretty precisely. And I'll show that later, okay? So we have this vector. How do we use it? I mean, well, okay, we know how to use it, sort of. But now what are its limitations? What, do you guys want to see an example of it first, or do you want to talk about limitations first?
Example.
Example, okay. So, we have an example. Let's suppose you have chosen to go Zealot Archon, a very common army. Your P vector, well then, and so let's suppose you're not going to bring any of your probes to battle, because you know it's a death sentence for you. 0, let's say you have 10 Zealots, and then 0, 0 down to Archon, which you have 1 of. 0, 0, etc. And then your efficiency matrix okay, we could technically figure out all the elements of the efficiency matrix, and they will stay constant for a while. However, what you can realize is, if you're only going to be fighting against a limited number of units, you don't need to worry about what the other ones are. So as far as we're concerned, all we're worried about is Zealot on Zergling, let's say, and that's going to be 3. Zeros everywhere else, down to Mutalisk, whereas Zealot on Mutalisk will be 0. Well, yeah. Because Zealots on Mutalisk is going to be 0. And down here we're going to have Archons with Archon efficiency against Zerglings. It's going to be something like 8. I mean, Archons can kill at least 8 things, right? Yeah. Archon on Ling, so efficiency of your unit against theirs. So it's going to be 8, let's say, and let's say 6 against Mutalisks, if they're grouped badly or whatever. And we'll get to the and all the rest of the terms are 0. So we take the transpose of this, we multiply by this. What do we get? Well, we don't actually have to have the whole vector anymore. We can simplify it down to 10, 1 transpose 3, 0, 8, 6. What this gives you is in the following. Well, here we go. 10, 1, 3, 0, 8, 6. This is just taking the transpose now. Well, that is 30 plus 8. We expect that with our entire army, we can kill 38 Zerglings. Or 10 times 0 plus 1 times 6. We can expect to kill 6 Mutalisks with our entire army. Well, it makes sense because the Zealots don't do anything. So, then we multiply by the appropriation matrix. Here's where it gets difficult. I kind of wanted to do the limitations of the numbers first. But you want to appropriate enough of your army to each sector of the battle, to each enemy unit, so that you can finish the battle, right? Or else you'll say like, you end up with 5 Zealots, but you didn't send the Archon towards the Mutalisks, so you end up with imbalanced battle. And that's where kind of micro comes in. But we can say the appropriation vector is going to be, let's suppose they have 25 Zerglings and 8 Mutalisks, or 8 Mutalisks. What we'll end up with is the following. If we take each number and divide it by the total sum of this. So 25 divided by 25 plus 8. 8 divided by 25 plus 8. We'll have what percentage of their army is going to be each unit. So here we're going to have 25 over 31 over 8 times 8 over 31. And then if you do this component-wise multiplication, we'll have...
These prettier numbers. He's 32, changed to 32 or something. Wow.
Okay, let's just accept that there are certain numbers. 38 times 25 over 31, and 24 times 31. Yeah. Nice. And I hear some of you pulling out calculators. I don't really expect you guys to do this by hand or at all, but I mean, serious. I mean, I'm not going to figure out these numbers. But what you can understand is, if you have a computer program, let's say MATLAB, you can crunch a whole list of these things. You can maximize using MATLAB. You can use a computer program to figure out these numbers for you. So as long as you understand the theory that these e's, they exist, and that your numbers, they exist, and you understand how to apply these numbers, then your computer program will be able to help you do this much easier than you with your calculator punching out, 13 times 14, that's like 250 numbers, okay?
The bottom number should be 48 over 31.
What?
The bottom number should be 48 over 31.
48, yeah. Because I can totally multiply.
33.
So, this is the number of units expected to kill, minus the Zerg army in general.
That was correct.
25 over 25 and was it 8 we had? And then we find out that our army loses. Well, it's actually really important to figure out that our army loses. Because if we hadn't figured this out, we might have sent in all our army blindly, might have lost everything, and then subsequently lost the game. But in this case, I'll know not to go out and fight, and then go hide in the protection of my cannons. How does that help? If let's say we had in a 15th unit here, and we call it the cannon. let's suppose I have 3 cannons here, and the efficiency of a cannon against the zealot, against the zergling is something like 6, and against the mutalisk might be 2. So you'll see how the addition of a cannon would help your numbers over here and be able to defeat your opponents. So these matrices, these numbers, it's infinitely adaptable to what you need it to do. So I mean, that's the usefulness of this. I mean, we're not doing this just for its own sake. We're doing this because we want it to help you in this sometime future. For instance, in the future, what if you don't know how to use your stalkers? You don't know how to use your colossi against the banelings, or whatever the case happens to be. You can run simulations, you can get these numbers, and then you can run MATLAB programs to maximize what your end result's going to be. So for an unknown situation, this matrix will predict the future for you. However, there are limitations. I swear this thing should be able to move. Well, I guess not. It just disappeared. However, there's limitations to this. And we're going to discuss several of them. Okay, first of all, we already discussed the appropriation vector, so we have to choose which parts of our army to send where. Actually, to truly send it correctly, we have to use a tensor. Again, that's beyond the scope of this class. Second, E. E sub ij. What is E sub ij for, let's say, a zealot without +1 on zerglings? Let's say some number, right? What if the zealot suddenly got upgrades? What if the zerglings suddenly got carapace? What if any number of upgrades happened? This E changes. So technically, we have a whole bunch of different E's, for the number of upgrades, positions, and terrain that we have. So this won't do. Another problem with this E sub ij. What is the effect of a medic? How many zerglings can a medic kill? Anyone? Come on, medics on zerglings. 0. How many zerglings can a marine kill?
Like 1.
Frankly, 0. If you just threw them at each other. But how many zerglings can 1 marine and 1 medic kill?
Zergling wings.
I swear, at least 3 or 4. Okay, maybe not 5 or 6, because that's really pushing it. But what you see is, this E is not perfect. Okay, you can't just say every E is going to be a constant. We'll just leave it at that. We can say that it's a good approximation, but we can't just take it that way. We have to take it further. So let's assume that E, the total E hat, equals E hat original, there's your constants, plus E hat prime. Okay? This is going to be our perturbation. There's going to be a slight change in what we know in order to make this more correct. Now the beauty of this is that you're going to have one E whose you're going to have one E whose elements are all going to be constant. For a constant matrix, it's easy to do linear operations on it. You can do linear algebra on it, row reduce, or do whatever you have to do with these constants. And finally, with this, we'll have zeros in most of the places. We'll have zeros in most of the elements, and then functions where we actually really need them. So this E prime could be something like, could anything really affect probe on drone? Not really. I mean, you could factor in upgrades and stuff, but that's only slight changes. 0, 0, 0, 0, zeros. However, when we start getting into things like, so we can put zeros almost everywhere. I mean, when you want to calculate upgrades, you have to have a matrix for it. But what if we just wanted to calculate the effect of having 2 extra medics? Well, for our E of T and Z, we'll have medics somewhere around here. Medics will have a perturbation, so to speak, of a function of the number of marines. So let's call this T sub 1. And okay, yeah, just T sub 1 actually. So your medics are going to make your marines that much stronger. And then so let's say somewhere else we have science vessels. Science vessels are also zero damage, but they can do a what? Okay, they can do a fixed amount of damage to someone, to your enemy. They can irradiate a certain number of units over time. So we'll have a function of t, of time. So what you can do with this matrix is that although it's much more complex and much more difficult, you can take what you need to know, or take what perturbations are especially significant to you, and apply only those, and then add it back in to the constants. So, I mean, is this really going to help your gameplay tomorrow? I really, really doubt it. If you grasp something out of this, wow. But is this going to help you in the future? When you start looking at units, when you start looking at how units progress, what units are good against what unit combos are good against what? This is going to help you a lot. And someone mentioned, what if you don't know what the opponent has? Who said that? Someone?
Somebody over there.
Someone said, what if you don't know what the opponent has? What's down? So what do we do in that case? Well, again, this matrix is going to help because you can plug in variables and then plug it back into your computer or whatever to maximize. Suppose you have an enemy. Okay, Protoss and Terran. Okay, I think Protoss is born in Terran, but Terran too. Do you ever know if you see 9 eggs somewhere? Do you know whether they're Hydralisks or Zerglings or Lurkers or Mutas or drones? Do you know any of this? I mean, yeah, you could. You have very good scouting. You could say, oh, by the amount of gas he has, by the amount of this, by the aggressiveness, by the expansions, you can kind of tell. Okay. But what if you just can't tell? You can maximize your future efficiency against any number of outcomes. Your Z, your enemy has the following vector, sorry. 0, Z2, Z3, Z4, Z7, Mutalisks, I guess, 0, 0, whatever. And then, you know they have some chance of being, let's say, drones, lurkers, or Mutalisks, okay? And we're going to say we don't care whether they're drones or not, because if they are drones, the Zerg's just dead. So we're going to care whether or not they're Mutalisks or lurkers. So we can say that, okay, well, let's make it as simple as possible for now, with no other units. And only Z6 and Z7 are going to be the units that you're worried about. Lurk and Muta. Okay? So, what if you say, okay, the maximum number of these things you can build right now is going to be some number, well, by resources. So resources divide by, okay, so total resources over cost for each one. And he has a 1/2 chance of building each of them. So, and also since the rest are zeros, we can just ignore them for a while. So your vector simply becomes Z sub resources over cost over the probability, and resource over cost, or I guess resource 6, resource 7 over cost 6, cost 7. Actually, no, resources total, sorry. Yeah. So the total number of resources he has over the cost of each unit, 7 times 2. So these 1/2 that I'm tacking on at the end is the probability that they might go one or the other. So you can plug this back into your whole matrix with the efficiencies and everything, and you end up at the end with, okay, if I get this kind of unit, I'll have maximum efficiency against everything you might have. Although I might not have 100% efficiency against, let's say, their Mutalisks. I mean, because you would build, let's say, Corsairs for that. But for now, we can say, okay, let's build the next best thing, High Templar. Or let's build the next best thing, Speed Zealots with Archons. So you can say that we're going to go on partial information, and we're going to come up with the best result we can using our partial information. And then let's say, oh my goodness, my scout, my probe, the scout, sees 9 Mutalisks flying over. we've essentially then crossed off this possibility and end up with this possibility only. And this 1/2 goes away because this is the whole 100% possibility he's going to have this. Okay? And then, with time then passes, he gets more resources, he can make more units, he can do whatever. Let's just say that this is equal to Z7 for now, because now, since we've seen it, it's a constant. It's no longer a probability, it's no longer some hazy number, it is a number. But after time t, time passes. Okay? After time t, after time passes, you know that he's going to have some other probability. He might have say, oh, I'm going to power Zerglings since you didn't know what I have. So now, and we also know that he's gathered some number of resources. We can say the rate of gathering is going to be k, and the times t, that's the resources, divide again by the cost. Cost 1, kt over cost 2, kt over cost 3, etc. So then this new matrix, the new vector, becomes 0, kt over cost 2 times 1/6, let's say, because he has a certain chance of building each one. Times 1/3, because let's say he thinks I already have mutalist technology. Why not use it? I have a higher chance of building mutalist than anything else. And then kt over c 4 times 1.
Half.
Yeah, half. And zeros everywhere else. The zeros would then mean what he can't build. He can't pop up an ultralisk in 6 minutes. You know that. So the ultralisk variable is going to be 0. Okay? So these are various things you can do with these vectors matrices to predict what you can do, how you can choose the best group of units to do what you can do in the future. Okay? And that's what I wanted to end up with last week. But it's good that we got through it this week anyways. So this week, as we know, it's going to be on micromanagement. Now, how many of you can tell me what you think micromanagement means? Micro, anyone? You all do it, I swear. Yes.
Unit control.
Unit control, okay.
Maximizing
Maximizing
the effect.
the effect. That's getting closer. Yes.
It's kind of manually controlling your units as opposed to letting the artificial intelligence control them.
Okay, that's the efficiency of you compared to the efficiency of your AI, right? I'm going to define it, and of course we can argue this to no end. So feel free to argue this. I'm serious, because if you don't agree with anything, then you can state your opinion, and you can state your reason, and then we can have a go at it. You know? I'm going to say that micro is firing the most number of weapons for the longest period of time. Okay? Firing the most number of weapons for the longest period of time. Because technically, that's exactly what micromanagement is. You have to fire more to kill more and keep yourself alive for longer. Yes?
Isn't there, aren't you basically like relative to the other units? So, like if you're firing your weapons at units which is not the most effective. Like if you're picking up the weaker units, right? That's more effective micro than you're just firing at weapons.
But this definition also includes that aspect, because this has to include the fact that your units are dying as well. So if your units are dying, then you're not firing the most number of weapons. Yes?
Wouldn't it also be the case, like, it'd be better to have 8 Zerglings attacked than 10 Zerglings? You'd be firing less weapons, but you do more damage.
Okay, granted, that's true. to do the most amount of damage, to save, to have the most effectiveness in the future. Definitely. But yes, Stephen?
Control of units that don't necessarily attack them, does it not fall under the category of micro?
Like, can you give us an example? Are you talking like medics?
Well, if your micro is like a gatherer to a scout, you're still microing, aren't you?
Okay. Actually, that's a good branch of this that I hadn't thought about. Well, the thing is, I figured scouting would come later, and we can talk about this scouting part later.
Okay.
But I guess we're going to talk about micro in battle for now. Okay, there's going to be all sorts of micro. There's going to be like microing your observers to get through turrets, or microing, well, whatever. There's going to be future micro that's not directly combat related. But for now, let's keep it combat related. So, does everyone have one of these sheets, or no? Who doesn't have a sheet? Anyone else? A sheet on micromanagement. So, what we have are corollaries to the central axiom of micromanagement. One is to keep your units alive for the longest period of time. Two is to retreat for future battles. Three is to maximize regeneration time or minimize it for your opponent. Four, to maximize splash damage and minimize it to yourself. And five, dodge attacks when possible. Okay? So, we're going to see how other people do this. Voila. The beauty of yeah. I guess while we're waiting for this thing to warm up, alright, I guess there's a university clan league that is trying to be organized right now. The play days are going to be on Saturdays, right during your lab. It's a great way to get your homework done, to like participate in this. So if any of you are interested, find me either during the break or after break. What's up?
Is there a skill level requirement?
Yeah, you gotta be higher than D+. D minus, sorry. Sorry, higher than D minus.
No.
Yeah, higher than D+ could. Oh man, that sucks.
We're gonna watch my There's a it's like we're playing using Berkeley because oh, the clan.
I think it's going off screen. My mouth is going off screen.
Yeah, that's freaking good. Touchpad.
So next time you do this, I won't turn it off. Alright.
Oh my god. That's really good touchpad.
Alright.
You guys have been watching this?
Alright, when my face turns blue because of the projector, everyone tell me, okay? So we can discuss now how the calculations involved in Minecraft, okay? We can now discuss the calculations in Minecraft. And again, these calculations are not to be like, oh, this is to make your micro better, but to understand the effect it's going to have. If you're going to spend like 300 APM on your micro alone, we're going to see in the future like how much that translates into how much it benefits you, as opposed to, let's say, building a bigger army, for instance. So let's suppose we have two populations. What populations of Marines? Marines. And we'll call this N1. And the second population. Yes! Screw that. We're Thank you again. How'd you do it?
Just reset it again. Yeah, I'd reset the whole system and not just the screen.
Oh, okay.
Nicely.
Looks like you have half your screen cut off. Oh, okay. Or just kidding.
Really cut off. I think this has to do with the
Resolution?
yeah. Screen itself. Yeah. You're moving this. You're moving this.
Oh. Alright, I won't mess with it now.
Alright. Alright, we'll just accept it for what it is and hope it'll be better next week. I really gotta do something. Hope we can do something about this in the future. But we have here
Do you have a hotkey that changes the screen back and forth?
yeah,
'Cause sometimes if you
function
just do
F5.
that.
Uh-oh.
Don't worry. Sometimes that gets it the offset fixed.
Okie dokie.
Sorry about that.
Can everyone see this? Let's see if we can maximize it, if it's going to be good. Well, I can't see
Oh,
that.
you can see the whole thing.
Okay, good. So here, we can see how you keep the most number of units alive for the longest time possible. The background behind this particular game is that purple only made one gateway against red's 3 gateways. So we see that, well, first of all, he's attacking here and running away when he does not have the advantage. That's a really great way of keeping the advantage, to run away when you don't have it. He has very good 2-on-1s over here, or 3-on-1s, and then while trying to run away, the units that are being hit more than once. So he's decreasing the opponent's effectiveness. So he just used like 6 zealots against 6 zealots and end up with like 4, okay? Okay, we see here, this 3-on-1 here, that this guy ran away. So both sides are exercising very good This is very good too. He's separating the army. We'll figure out next week what the effect of separating army is, and we'll calculate mathematically. And God, it's hard. But what we see here is that you are separating them. And don't worry, I did the calculations for you, so you have the results and you can just use them. Again, running away when he doesn't have the advantage. I mean, why fight when you know you're going to lose? So don't fight at all. Just run away. See, he has the advantage once more, so he's pushing out. So this is basically going through all like I guess 6 rules that we have, or 5 rules, to attack the most number of times with the most number of units. And I mean, implanted in that is to keep the most number of units alive in order to be able to attack with them. And this goes on for another I guess a minute or so. So we won't be I mean, we have other replays to watch, so we don't need to watch them do zealot fighting for this long.
Jeez. Wait, why did he only have 1 gateway to the opponent's 3?
He was planning on doing a tech rush, a tech build of some sort.
So he got rushed.
Yeah, so Garipto is purple. He built 1 gateway and 1 assimilator in preparation for the in preparation for a tech build. I guess if you guys, how many of you have the reader? If you guys have the reader, you can read in the scouting section. I mean, whether or not that's beneficial, whether or not to do that build. But I mean, Grimto chose to do that build for one reason or another, and he had to pay severely because he got rushed. So we'll have now we will see dragoons again attacking for the most
That's crazy.
well, attacking for the most number of times for the longest amount of time possible.
It's cut off.
It's cut off.
It's cut off. Okay.
Really cut off.
The other one was cut off.
something
too.
about
The pixel.
So can you guys see clearly?
I think this is fine.
So basically what we have here is blue, whose screen name is Kingdom, is getting attacked by DTs. So if blue, if yellow, I guess, if yellow spends extra resources in getting DTs, then it must mean his other base defense is not as good. So blue here has amassed some number of dragoons, but can amass no more dragoons because this unit this building right here, which is vital in the Protoss' survival, is about to go down. Okay. You can see the observatory down below, so you know that he's going to have an observer, but as you see right now, he has no more nexus.
Yes.
So what does he do with this? Well, okay, this is yellow. Yellow knows that blue has no more production. So yellow knows that if he just fends off his next attack with whatever he has, or possibly everything he has, he'll be able to win. So this is yellow making his preparations. These are all of yellow's preparations. 3 Dark Templar Zealots, like 5 cannons or so. 4 cannons. In order to do what Grimton wanted to do, he first sent in his probes. That's actually, I think someone brought up something like that. It's to it's so that the units that deal the most damage get hurt last in order for them to survive. In order to fire the most guns in the most amount of time. And we can see that he's really actively trying to take the least amount of damage on his dragoons. We'll see in a moment how he's also going to use the tactic of regeneration to great extent. Because as all of you know, Protoss have shields, and the Protoss shields regenerate at some rate. So if you lengthen that rate for the most amount of time, then you have the most amount of health, essentially. But he can't really drag it out forever, because every time he's not attacking, yellow is going to be mining. And mining means more units to fight in the future. So he has to balance the regeneration and regeneration and how much he lets his opponent mine. And right now he's abusing his range. Okay? He's abusing his range because he knows that the enemy melee units aren't going to have as many attacks on him as possible. Whereas he can have full attacks. We'll discuss the concept next week called flux, or if we run out of stuff today, we'll talk about today. But the concept of flux and how much of your army can attack at once is going to come into play.
Wow. This was the best game I've ever seen.
So now he has the advantage, but he can't squander. I mean, he has some advantage, but he can't squander it. He has to use these 2 dragoons and I guess 1 probe, and have them 1 regenerate, 2 kill everything that's going to shoot him. Okay, and in this case it means either probes or that dragoon right there.
Wow. Jeez.
So right now he has nothing. His supply is like 2 out of. His supply is 4 out of like 40. Okay.
5 out of 4. 1 probe.
No, the probe dies. And yellow taps out. Okay. So that's an excellent showing of how to fire the most number of weapons to take the least amount of damage and to get the most amount of regeneration possible. So I'm sure all of you are tired of watching Protoss on Protoss, so I guess we can save this for later. So now we see lurkers. Lurkers deal extensive splash damage. Like if a spy went through like here, that'd be like 200 damage right there, right? Yeah. So what you have to do is, well, as Terran at least, is to not get hit. It's kind of, as hard as it sounds, but look, wherever there's opponents, he runs. Of course, in this particular case, he's abusing his mobility. He knows that the lurkers can't get up and run and fight, so he's just he's going where they aren't. Again, this is running away. I mean, this might be running away towards the opponent's base, but it's still running away to so that the opponent does the least amount of damage possible, while his own units does the most amount of damage possible. Like, look, nearly all of his Marines are firing like all the time. So we see him keep running away, running away.
Who is this?
This is Nada.
I was gonna say it looks like Nada.
So we see the effect of running away to preserve your units for the most amount of time. And this is like a tutorial, I guess, on how to kill lurkers. I mean, this is more of like how to play as opposed to like theory behind it. But you can see, all he has to do is minimize splash damage. In the beginning, he has like 7 Marines or 12 Marines or so, whatever, how many Marines, he just attack move. But in the end, he used some very clever techniques. So at the very end, he's fighting like 6 lurkers with no medics. So what he's doing is that okay, remember, actually, let's pause this. Let's discuss this for a minute. All right, so of the 5 corollaries, I guess we have, which ones will apply to these lurkers? Oh, these Marines and lurkers. Well, 1, keep units alive. Oh, that's true. He's using defense matrix to keep these units alive for the most amount of time. He's retreating for future fights. Well, not really. There's no future fight. This is it. Maximize regeneration time. No medics, no regeneration. Minimize splash damage. Yes. By running these Marines around, he's having the lurkers attack them.
And Koreans always look to Nada because his